Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be wrenching on a 70 Camaro today, so you're going to want to stay tuned. This Costantino Garage. Okay, so we're going to have to tear apart this whole front end again, remove the motor and trans again. This was all put together sort of for mock-up and also for transportation purposes as I moved into another state. So here we are, we're back at it. Let's get this front end tear down and continue rocking on this build. Let's get it. All right, well, as you can tell, we got the motor, transmission out, whole front end's gone. We got the doors off, everything that was inside of here all cleaned out. So now we are ready to continue. We're basically back to where we were before the move. So now what I want to do is I want to finish buttoning up all this tin work back here. So, I mean, all the tin work per se is done, but I want to bond everything together and seal everything up. All the seams and edges and everything, I'm going to bond seal. And there's still a couple of little things to do with the tubs. I have to tee in there to stiffen everything up because it is kind of just, in some areas it is a little flappy. So I want to make some little custom brackets and tighten all those up. And so before we get to that, I want to bond basically from the floor, all this area to the beginning of the tin work there, and then I am going to run some heat shield material basically from this flat paint forward. Okay, I didn't want to bore you with the whole video on seam sealing this whole thing, so jump to the meat and potatoes. I try not making a mess of this stuff, but never really goes well. But I think I seam sealed it up pretty well, considering that it doesn't have to be perfect since all this is going to be hidden. Now I was gonna go above and beyond and mask everything and have it perfect lines, and then I was thinking, what's that matter when it's all gonna be hidden? So I'm gonna let this stuff set up, and then I'll lay down some of that thermal sound deadening material. Running all new brake lines. You can see we got fresh brake lines going through the back. It's all hidden. Nice and clean. Try to make them as neat as possible. Come through here, and then I just have them along here because I'm waiting for a right-hand side proportioning valve bracket for the Wilwood setup. So we're sort of stuck until that shows up tomorrow. Got the master cylinder mocked up. I was a little worried about this too, but plenty of room. Obviously, I cannot do left-hand side proportion valve, which comes standard with this setup, of course. So, I had to spend another $100 to get the right side bracket. But from a distance, it's sweet. You can't even see any brake lines really. Okay, here's the overall look with the proportion valve in the master cylinder, and unfortunately it is really close to the steering column, so there is room to come underneath here for the front imports. I'll probably just have to do a little S-deal in there. I will pull the steering column out to give me a little bit more room, and I might clearance a little bit of this cover here. I think it's really needed. Okay, with the steering column off, made it a lot easier to get in there. I got both lines cut and flared and installed. Looks pretty good. Got it all as symmetrical as I could. Got the wheels and brakes off. We are waiting on the new brakes to arrive so we could slap them on. Old brakes right here, they're gonna be going on sale. I also finished up bonding a lot of the parts. I did this one pretty nice and clean. I was very meticulous. I didn't want to get it all over the panels. So it looks pretty seamless. All right, we finally got the brakes in. Brake pads, caliper, mounting hardware. We got the steel braided lines. We got the calipers. Big old Mac Daddy 4-piston calipers. And we got the 13-inch drilled slotted rotors. So we are ready to get these front brakes slapped onto the front of the car here. So let's do that. Okay, brakes, both sides are on, fairly simple. Now for you guys that haven't installed too many of these, please know that when you get the drilled slotted rotors, they are directional, hence the little arrow. That is the direction of travel. So there is a left hand and right hand side, so make sure these are always pointed forward towards the front of the car. Okay, so to install the rear brake line, we're using these banjo fittings. And with banjo fittings, there's a stud, and you can see the little hole in the center. So this gets sandwiched in between there, but you have to run these, basically these are like copper gaskets, top and bottom, one on each side, so it'll create the seal, so it doesn't leak here. And that also brings me to another point. You have to make sure to clean the surface, because unlike any other thing that has a gasket in between, you want to start off with 2 clean surfaces. So both ends clean, and then slap it together. You want to hook up this other end first, which goes through in here, like so, and they give you these new hold down clips. Hold down, you can thread in your line. Brakes installed. Use the line with the sandwich gaskets hooked up to factory mount with the hardware included, and brake lines all ran to the master cylinder. So I'm going to do the same thing to the driver's side, and essentially front brakes are done, minus putting the pads in and also bleeding the system. Okay boys, and just like that, you installed a set of Corvette front Wilwood disc brakes. Lines hooked up, everything's bolted in, shims. So now we just throw in the brake pads, bleed the system. So with this Camaro, obviously it's a 70 Camaro, I am running C5 spindles. It has better geometry. There's actually a hub with a bearing instead of having the old school spindles with like the axle, like there's a stud that's coming out. You got to put bearings and grease and a lock nut and all that nonsense. And then there's a big hub that comes with the disc brake. This setup, it takes all the pressure off of that running on a hub. So it's almost like a floater, like how you have a floater rear end. Same concept for the front end, better geometry. And then you just basically have a floater disc that just goes right on, which the wheel essentially holds it in place once you put everything on. Much simpler, better design. Okay, now we're on to the rear brakes. I got these Speedway motors, rear disc brake setup, big single piston, pretty good setup. I figured cost effective, this should be good enough for the rear brakes, and I could always upgrade these bad boys later. But unfortunately, since I have the 1/2-inch axle studs, this is like a unilug, so there's Ford and Chevy bolt pattern. And unfortunately, these are set up for a standard, stud Chevy. Ford is the 1/2-inch, which is what I need. So I'm gonna have to drill these holes out to fit my 1/2-inch axle studs. So let's get these drilled. Okay, now we got all the rear brakes in, both sides. You can see the other side's in. So now let's put these rear wheels back on and see how the offset improved. Okay, everything is back together. The brakes fit nice and tight within the wheels. Looks good. It did kick out the offset about another, I'd say about 1/4 inch, so it looks really good, nice and tight. Everything still fits, nothing rubs. So that is finished, basically finished product with the brakes, front and rear. I just got to run the rear lines from here to the back, and I need a few parts for that. But that is gonna wrap up this video. Next video, we're gonna wrap up the brakes, and then I think we're about ready to start doing bodywork and paint on this bad boy, so you're not gonna wanna miss that. Until then,